be, and I think it will be if we all keep looking at this, is Kai Allams, who was the first transgender athlete at a NCAA Division I school. Kai, are you in here?
Yes, I am.
Stand up for a second. Stand up. Stand up. Kai, I hope you didn't mind me saying that. I didn't realize he was here until right before I spoke, but you know, what Kai has done is been able to give lots of young transgender athletes the knowledge that they can go through it and they can play. Of course, we have Billie Jean King, we have Martina, who have done everything for all women in sports, and I think men also. And they were brave enough to step out and take $1 to play on a circuit when they couldn't get the money that they needed from the men's circuit that had them in there. I have to mention Abby Wambach and Robbie Rogers from soccer. They're very present day, but they're the ones that you look at and you see them happy and smiling and moving in a great way in the world, and that's just a fantastic role model. The other I think historical group that I want to mention that has fueled this explosion, and I would say actually is the explosion, is the U.S. women's soccer team, an entire team with lots of out lesbian players and an out lesbian coach who just kicked butt everywhere. So you can't say that this was bad for sports. What you saw was a pretty phenomenal team. And again, so visible to everybody. The thing sport does is it gives a visibility in a way that other things don't. What we also have to recognize with this is the people that I've mentioned that have been there to help our present day athletes come out. They went through struggles that we need to see and recognize the struggles they went through. Babe Dietrichson was married, and you just can't even imagine how she did during that time. Billy Bean from baseball, he played a game while his partner was being buried because he felt like he had to show that he was going to be at baseball. Billie Jean King, she didn't come out as an activist. It was a palimony case, where she was sitting there next to her husband having to talk about having an affair with her secretary who's suing her. That's not too much fun. And then Martina, Martina was out, and she probably made a tenth of the money that she could have because she was out. So those are some of the things that we have to, when we surround and support people who are coming out, that we have to help protect them from. The other thing that I was going to mention about this is that the media stories and what we're seeing describe the people who are coming out now are usually, really stories of courage and personal achievement and who they are as a young person coming up, and then a few lines about their athletic ability. So it ends up being focused more on the person than even the athletic ability. Now, what we've seen happen with that, and I think this is part of the movement that hopefully is going to change sooner than later, is that sort of pink cloud that surrounds the athletes that come out then dissipates and disappears as they're playing. Michael Sams, coming out, celebration, being drafted very low, getting to play on a team, then not on the team, then trying to go to Canada, and then not playing in Canada. Derek Gordon is another player from college who was the first D1 player to come out. Again, it was a fantastic story, great. He was talking to the media, He did transfer from University of Massachusetts at Amherst to Seton Hall, I think. But he did that because he's trying to get to the pros, so all of a sudden he's just kind of stopped talking to the media. It's like, I just have to concentrate on basketball. I can't talk about this other stuff. So we're still seeing, we're seeing that happen even as we read the happy stories. Now, I will say that's a little different in men's and women's, because in men's that ends up happening like that. What we're seeing when women come out, especially at the pro level, is that it's all good. They're really happy, they're coming out, they're accepted, they're getting the money they need to get, they're getting sponsors. So it's working differently on the women's area there as far as participants go. So those sacrifices are made, they're still being made, they're not written about, we don't know about those as much. I feel like we're still in sort of a revolution where we're moving here, maybe a little bit slower than other groups, but we catch fire when we get that frenzied media wanting to get the story and follow the story. I do think that we're breaking some ceilings. I mean, for women, I talk a little bit about the difference of women and men. I mean, we do have some women that are breaking into men's pro sports. Becky Hammond in the NBA as an assistant coach, and she was actually the head coach of the team during the summer, during summer practices or summer league, and they won the whole thing. So, which shows that she's not just kind of a token coach, but a really, really great coach. We have a football intern coach. We have a baseball, I think, intern coach that's helping. So, we're sort of breaking those ceilings right there. The behind-the-scenes support that's happened, again, I think that needs to be recognized, is the work of some people that have been working for decades. I get to go in there since, 84. That gives me decades. This has been working for decades. And if you don't know these names and you ever do a review of literature, this is who you want to look for. You want to look for Professor Pat Griffin from University of Massachusetts Amherst. I mean, for probably 3 or 4 decades, she has been on the ground, teaching in schools, talking to people about LGBT in sports, making policies happen. I mean, you're not going to see her name in the headlines or on the cover of a magazine ever. Same thing with Dr. Sue Rankin from Penn State. And what she has done is research to talk about the atmosphere that these athletes are participating in. And she's worked with the NCAA. So she has these solid facts that she's been working on for decades that she can hand out so that people really have what they need, the data, to make the changes. Another person I just want to mention is Dr. Dee Mosbecker. Now, she is a filmmaker. But what she has done is she made a film in '95 called Out for a Change, addressing homophobia in women's sports, and that was shown in many colleges around the United States. So, that was a while ago, so that was really important. And then she also did a film called Training Rules, which talks about the Penn State case where we sued the coach Rennie Portland, the athletic director, and the president of the school for discriminating against a young African-American basketball player on the basis of racial and sexual orientation. So she's huge in getting that information out, and she's been working on this for a long time too. So just wanted to mention them. There's some organizations that work, and some of these I want to mention because what I find is that we're trying to make a conscious effort in the sports movement, and this, I'm kind of talking about the LGBT Sports Coalition, which is made up of 30 organizations and people who work together to kind of move forward together instead of doing it all separate. But we are trying to learn from the other movements, and especially the women's movement. I mean, the women's movement has still never recovered from the fact that women of color were not included in the very beginning in marching through there, and it was always a catch-up kind of thing. So we in the sports movement are really trying to make sure across the board, the ones of us that are setting up strategy and thinking about that is everybody, is our transgender athletes, people of color, men, women. We have the coach of the U.S. women's wheelchair basketball team in that organization. So in the movement itself, that's something that we're really, really trying to make happen. So a couple of organizations you can play with Wade Davis, Break the Silence with Nevin Capel. They really do a lot of intersectional kinds of work that's absolutely critical. And then I mentioned the Sports Coalition. A lot of those organizations, again, you won't see them in headlines, but they're on the ground, talking to colleges, talking to athletes, having the conversations, and that's absolutely critical. Okay, jumping into looking at legal impetus to change. One of the reasons why I took the job at NCLR, and let me tell you, I was, 50 years old or so before I ever left a college campus. Because I just felt like, and I told my mom this, that I'm just never going to leave a college campus. It's the greatest thing in the world. So, I had to wander out and go to downtown San Francisco and get a job in an office without a gym next door to me or a fitness center. It was frightening. But the reason I did that is because I felt like I felt like I'd always been just reaching out and touching the people around me and doing a good job with working with them. But the education is slow. It's very slow in changing minds and changing hearts. It always has to happen. It should never stop. But I was really getting impatient with it. And when an opportunity came up at the National Center for Lesbian Rights for me to begin a sports project, I jumped right on it. Because what happens is, if you've got that consequence, or what I call like the big stick, and you're going in and talking, things move lots faster. If you can do a gentle conversation, and the people know that behind you, there's the law that's going to make you do the right thing if you don't just figure out how to do it and make it the best. So I want to mention a few of the cases that I think have been important, and also a trend, a very disturbing trend that we have seen going on for about the last 5 or 6 years, and this concerns women coaches, which does affect the women athletes. And in 2005, there was the Penn State case that I just mentioned, and that's pre-Jerry Sandusky case, and all the same exact players. So even with that case with Coach Renee Portland, you had a big cover-up by everybody. You had her for 10 to 15 years discriminating against lesbian athletes. Doing things like having the freshmen follow people and see what they're doing and coming back and reporting to her, and all kinds of things like that. So we had, and that case was a game changer because everybody watched it in women's sports. Renee Portland was one of the top 10 women basketball coaches in the country. And even the year we sued her, she got Basketball Coach of the Year. So that case itself said to coaches around the country, you can't treat athletes this way. There is something that can happen if you do. So that was an important case. I'm going to run through some quickly so that we can talk just a couple of minutes about the trend that's happening. 2007, Fresno State, the volleyball coach, the softball coach, athletic administrator, sued and won settlements against them, millions of dollars. It went to a jury, and they were able to show evidence like the athletic department putting pictures of coaches up on the wall.